Hello from the Daily Dad. It is Christmas week and the Daily family is visiting Las Vegas. That city is full of manufactured beauty, but it's also important to appreciate the natural beauty of the surrounding area. So today, we decided to rent a car and to drive about 2.5 hours or so west to Death Valley. Although it can become the hottest place in North America during those unforgiving dry summer months, it can be amazingly pleasant during the holiday season. I've never been there, so that's where we are heading today. And that means that you get to come along for the ride too. I'm curious and you're curious. We are going on a day trip to Death Valley on this episode of The Daily Dad. Death Valley is incredibly vast. In fact, in the continental US, guess which national park is the largest? At over 3.3 million acres, it is actually Death Valley. So a half-day road trip really isn't enough. There are ample hiking opportunities. There are some amazing sites within the park that required more travel time than we had. And there are incredible stargazing opportunities for those who have the time to stay overnight. Still, even 6 hours of time at the park will allow you to immerse yourself in otherworldly landscapes, breathtaking views, and a trip to the lowest point in North America. We think we did the best that we could with the limited amount of time that we had, and hopefully this travel log will help you get the most out of your limited time here too. This is where we entered the park from the east, and this is the most direct entry point from Las Vegas. Once we entered, we drove past all of the very tempting roadside attractions and directly to the visitor center at Furnace Creek, about 20 miles in from our entry point. Here is where you find that famous thermometer. As you can see, it's right at room temperature today, but very recently, on July 7th of 2024, the temperature reached a beyond sweltering 130 degrees Fahrenheit. So we are here at the perfect time of the year. Here is also where you will find the visitor center, which, like Do-Re-Mi, is a very good place to start. There's a small museum where you can learn about the history of Death Valley. For example, it received its macabre name back in the mid-1800s when pioneers became lost and almost perished within its labyrinthine dunes and rock formations on their way westward to join the California Gold Rush. And there is a small auditorium where a film also provides context on the Death Valley experience, but most helpful are the rangers at the information desk who will help to point out what's worth seeing depending on how much time you have there. Something interesting that I learned was that much of the original Star Wars film, which we now know as Star Wars 4: A New Hope, was filmed in Death Valley. Yes, Death Valley served as Luke's home planet of Tatooine. The Rangers provide you with this information sheet listing points of interest where you can visit those filming locations and familiar backdrops where cast and crew filmed their scenes in January of 1977. No, they are not in a galaxy far, far away, but are actually within a 20-minute drive of Furnace Creek. Because you'll need about 5 hours to drive back and forth from Las Vegas, you'll only be able to spend about 7, maybe 8 hours here in Death Valley before things get really dark. We arrived around 11 a.m. and we plan to leave right around sunset. Outside of the Star Wars film sites, there are 4 other scenic stops that would make the most sense in the limited time you'll have, and since you'll be working your way eastwards back to Las Vegas. So we hastily made our way to our first point of interest, Badwater Basin, which is about a 30-minute drive. And this is probably the most famous of Death Valley sites to check out, as this is where you can walk to the lowest point in North America at 282 feet below sea level. The basin is basically an expansive salt flat, a remnant of a large lake that evaporated eons ago. As you walk out onto the salt flats, turn back around and look at the face of the mountain, you'll see a marker halfway up that points out where sea level is. It's quite surreal. Once you've taken in the haunting splendor of this locale, it's time to backtrack to the main road and then to hit up Zabriskie Point. This is a very popular viewpoint, significant for its iconic Badlands landscape, as well as panoramic views of the salt flats and the mountains in the distance. It's a half-mile hike from the parking area to the vantage point where you can enjoy the scenery, but it is worth every step. You can easily spend 20 minutes here appreciating nature's beauty here at this vantage point, but keeping in mind that we'll need to leave the park before the sun sets, we kept our visit to just 20 minutes and then made our way to our car to head over to the third site. And that would be 20 Mule Team Canyon. It's about a 5-mile drive to the canyon entrance from Zabriskie Point. This is a rugged, one-way, 2.5-mile road that transports you to a world far, far away. 150 years ago, caravans of mules would transport tons of borax ore through this canyon as they made their way to California. 50 years ago, this canyon was used as the backdrop where Jabba the Hutt's fortress existed in Star Wars VI: The Last Jedi. Today, though, it's an unpaved road through the stirring Badlands that's more fun if you had a 4-wheel drive, but still quite traversable in a normal passenger vehicle. My advice, though, is to drive through this when the sun is out. Once night falls, there are no lights save for the stars above. Meanwhile, cellular service is non-existent. Once you've returned to the main road, there's probably time for one more site to see. So drive about 35 minutes until you arrive at Dante's View, the most scenic overlook on your way back towards Las Vegas at an elevation of 5,475 feet. Of note, as you peek over the edge of the viewing area, you'll actually see Badwater Basin. And those tiny dots that look like ants are actually the visitors stepping out onto the lake bed. It's where we were just about an hour or so ago. Here at Dante's View, you'll be treated to one of the best views of Death Valley. If you decide to stay long enough, you'll witness an amazing sunset to be followed by a starry-filled night. But beware of the extreme temperature change, maybe as much as 15 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit from when the sun is out to when the sun goes down, and as well as when you are 282 feet below sea level to when you are 5,475 feet above. So make sure to bundle up. With the sun dipping below the mountain range, it's time to head back to Las Vegas. And we were thrilled with our day trip. Death Valley certainly deserves to be higher up on really everyone's list of places to visit, especially if you're in Vegas during the cooler months. It's surprisingly nearby, surprisingly comfortable, surprisingly amazing on so many levels. Hey, this is the Daily Dad reminding you to try new things and to be happy.